Good morning, students. In our previous lesson, we studied the various mechanisms of absorption of digested food. Today, we will study the passage of small food molecules from the gastrointestinal tract into the bloodstream or lymphatic system for absorption. Let's start with absorption from the mouth. Normally, there is no absorption from the mouth. Only a few drugs may be absorbed into the blood. Absorption from stomach. It takes place to a limited degree. Substances normally absorbed are water, glucose, and a considerable amount of alcohol. How is this alcohol absorbed from the stomach? When alcohol reaches the stomach, up to 20% will be absorbed into the blood and the remaining 75 to 85% is absorbed in the duodenum. Eating plays a big role in how your body handles alcohol. When there is no food in the stomach before drinking, alcohol is absorbed more slowly. But when you drink on an empty stomach, much of the alcohol passes quickly from the stomach to the small intestine, where most of it is absorbed into the bloodstream. The longer the alcohol stays in the stomach, the slower it is absorbed and the slower it affects your body. All the substances that are absorbed, they pass through the walls of the stomach into the venous circulation. Iron is dissolved out from foods in the stomach in the presence of HCl that is present in the gastric juice, but the absorption of iron takes place in the small intestine. Absorption from the small intestine. This is the main absorptive organ. 90% of the digested food is absorbed here. Why? Because remember, it fulfills the three factors that we studied in our previous lesson. The surface area is greatly increased by the microscopic folds of the villi. The food stays here for a longer time and the food is broken down to its smallest denominators and is now ready to be absorbed. There are two general pathways for the transport of materials absorbed by the intestine. First, the veins of hepatic portal system which lead directly to the liver, and two, the lymphatic vessels of the intestinal area which eventually lead to the blood by way of the lymphatic system and thoracic duct. First, we will take the absorption of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are mainly absorbed in the form of monosaccharides. Some disaccharides are also absorbed. These are absorbed into the hepatic portal venous system. Blood carries them to the liver where excess sugar is converted into glycogen and it is stored in this form. There are two mechanisms for transport: passive transport and active transport. Passive transport, this is again of two types: simple diffusion and facilitated diffusion. Mannoses and pentoses, they are transported by simple diffusion, whereas fructose is transported through facilitated diffusion, means it requires a carrier for its transport. But hexoses are transported actively, that is glucose and galactose. They move against the concentration gradient. This picture here explains how the hexoses are transported actively. The active transport of glucose can be explained by a mobile carrier which binds both glucose and sodium at separate sites and transports them through the plasma membrane to the interstitial cell. The glucose diffuses into the capillaries and the sodium returns for more cargo. Now, the absorption of proteins. Under normal circumstances, the dietary protein are almost completely digested into amino acids. amino acids are actively transported from the intestine into the portal blood. There are several different carrier systems for transporting different classes of amino acids. Some of them require sodium, as in the case of carbohydrate transport. Now, the absorption of fats. How will fat pass through the watery layer of the mucus that coats the absorptive lining of the digestive tract? You guessed it right. The answer is bile. Bile salts envelop the fatty acids and monoglycerides to form micelles. Micelles have a fatty acid core with the water molecule soluble exterior. This allows efficient transportation of the intestinal microvillus. Here, the fat components are released into the cells of the digestive tract. Fats require a special handling to travel in the bloodstream. And what is that? Inside the intestinal cells, the monoglycerides and fatty acids reassemble themselves into triglycerides. Triglycerides, cholesterol, and phospholipids. They together form lipoproteins when joined with the protein carrier. Lipoproteins have an inner core that is primarily made up of triglycerides and cholesterol esters. The outer envelope is made of phospholipids interspersed with proteins and cholesterol. Together, they form a chylomicron, which is a large lipoprotein that enters the lymphatic system and is released into the bloodstream via a jugular vein in the neck. Chylomicrons transport food fats perfectly through the body's water-based environment to specific destinations such as liver and body tissues. This picture will clearly explain how what we have studied takes place, the transport of fats takes place. Absorption of vitamins. We have two types of vitamins, water soluble vitamins and fat soluble vitamins. The water soluble vitamins, the members of B complex and vitamin C, except vitamin B12. They easily diffuse across the walls of the intestine into the blood. For vitamin B12, a special system is required. In the stomach, it combines with intrinsic factor. During the absorption process, vitamin B12 is released from the intrinsic factor and now it enters the blood. Fat soluble vitamins. Vitamins A, D, E and K. They are first dissolved in micelles which enter the mucosal cells of the intestine by simple diffusion. The absorption of these fat-soluble vitamins is decreased in the absence of bile. Absorption of water. The water absorption begins in the stomach. In intestine, about 15 to 20 liters of water is absorbed per day by the process of osmosis. The mineral salts are also absorbed. Some inorganic salts are absorbed through intestinal wall. Sodium, potassium and chloride ions are absorbed readily. Magnesium and sulfate are absorbed with difficulty. The functions of large intestine. First is secretion. It secretes mucus which lubricates the feces and facilitates their passage through rectum and anus. Second function is absorption. Water is absorbed, some drugs are also absorbed and minerals are also absorbed, but the absorption is very slow. Then excretion. The excess of calcium, iron and drugs are excreted from the large intestine. And the bacterial decomposition of cellulose. So, this is how the absorption takes place of food stuffs that are broken down into simple food during the process of digestion. Thank you.